has just tabled our government's One Canadian Economy legislation, a bill with two equally important components designed to create one Canadian economy out of 13. A bill that is laser-focused on building a stronger, more competitive, and a more resilient Canadian economy that works for all Canadians. A bill that meets this hinge moment with the urgency and determination it requires. The first component of the bill eliminates federal barriers to internal trade and labor mobility. It's our contribution to a broader effort with all the provinces and territories to eliminate the barriers that have held our country back for far too long. Barriers that cost Canadians as much as $200 billion every year. With the One Canadian Economy Bill, we are aligning federal rules and regulations with those from the provinces and territories, helping to create one market, not 13. That will allow more goods, more services to be transported, sold, and bought across our nation without restriction, generating new opportunities for Canadian businesses and lowering costs for Canadian consumers. It will allow Canadian workers to do their jobs wherever they want in this great country. Provinces and territories have already announced 7 similar initiatives this year. More are in the works. The momentum to give Canadians from coast to coast to coast what they deserve is now extraordinary. Nous faisons en sorte qu'il soit plus facile pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes de travailler partout au pays
across the country without being submitted by too much bureaucracy. We're encouraging the provinces and territories to do the same for their own citizens as far as lodging and certification for the qualified workers, like health workers, teachers, and others. We're establishing a real free trade across Canada.
The second component of the bill enables the federal government to identify and expedite nation-building projects. Canada is a country that used to build big things. Expo 67, the World's Fair, went from concept to completion in 4.5 years. The St. Lawrence Seaway, 7 locks stretching over 300 kilometers that has transported more than 3 billion tons of cargo since it opened in 1959, took just 5 years to build. But in recent decades, it's become too difficult to build in this country. Right now, to receive approval, major projects must undergo numerous reviews and assessments that often happen sequentially, one after another, rather than simultaneously, all at once. That process is arduous. It takes too long, and it's holding our country back. For too long, when federal agencies have examined a new project, their immediate question has been why. With this bill, we will instead ask ourselves how. Avec notre projet de loi pour une économie canadienne, nous allons
for the economy of Canada will identify the project of national interest. Means what reinforces the economy, the resiliency, and the safety of Canada. Show some undeniable advantages for Canada that should be led to term their priority for the indigenous communities that contribute to a growth and to the climate objectives of Canada. For the projects that satisfy these criteria, we'll consider them as approved from the start and accelerate the process of evaluation.
With this new process in this landmark bill, once a project has been designated as being in the national interest, a new federal major project office will bring together all the relevant federal departments and agencies to provide a single set of conditions that must be met for the project to move forward. Our office will work with the nation-building projects in a streamlined process, Proponents will know what they need to do for final approval on their projects, and that approval coming within a maximum of 2 years, if all the conditions are fulfilled. Nous conclurons
We'll conclude also some cooperation deals with all the provinces and territories interested in a delay of 6 months so that we can reach our objective, one project.
Crucially, this legislation mandates that there must be meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples, consistent with Section 35 of the Constitution and the duty to consult during both the process of determining which projects are in the national interest and the development of the rigorous conditions for each of those projects. Indigenous expertise will be at the center of this new process, including through an Indigenous Advisory Council comprising First Nations, Métis, and Inuit representation to provide guidance to the new Federal Major Projects Office. We will also be providing funding for Indigenous participation in this new process of evaluation from start to finish. At the same time, being a reliable partner to Indigenous people is not just about upholding the duty to consult. Enabling the creation of long-term wealth and prosperity for Indigenous peoples through equity ownership is central to building Canada strong. And that's why we're doubling the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program from $5 billion to $10 billion, enabling more Indigenous communities to become owners of major projects. The objective of this
law project is to accelerate national interest projects so we could have better careers and prosperity across Canada, while by respecting our obligations towards the Indigenous people, the principle of consenting and to be given freely and in all knowledge and our rigorous governmental norms.
As the legislation states, the purpose is to enhance Canada's prosperity, national security, economic security, and national autonomy, while protecting the environment and upholding the rights of Indigenous peoples. As I said at the First Minister's meeting earlier this week, we're working alongside this to get the illegal and unjustified tariffs that the Americans have imposed on our nation lifted as soon as possible. We're fighting to get the best deal for Canada, and we will take all the time necessary, but no more than that. At the same time, we are building new trade relationships around the world. Those new relationships will make us more resilient. But by building at home, we will truly make Canada strong. That's what First Ministers unanimously committed to in Saskatoon on Monday. That's why we're introducing the legislation today. We're giving Canadians the ability to give ourselves far more than any foreign government can ever take away. We can build big, build bold, build now, build one Canadian economy, build a better Canada for all and for all time. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
We'll now proceed to questions. Nous commencerons avec une question, une relance. We'll begin with one question, one follow-up. Première question, first questions, Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Carney. Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada.
Laurence Martin from Radio-Canada. Let's say that there's a pipeline project that you consider in the national interest, but there's a province that doesn't agree. Will you impose it?
No.
Simply no. We must have a consensus of all the provinces, including the Indigenous people. There are many projects of national interest, and there will be a process to establish a consensus for some of them, because the project, we have to be able to put in place, build the project, and if a province doesn't want it, It's impossible.
C'est pas le choix.
It's not the choice of the government, the federal
I'll
government.
simplify. We will not impose a project on a province. We need consensus behind these projects, and we need the participation of Indigenous peoples. I'm going to add something. I'll translate it into French, which is what's encouraging from the first ministers' meeting in Saskatchewan is that many provinces came together in support of projects that would stretch across provincial boundaries. So, for example, the Western and Arctic Corridor would be an example, or the Energy East Partnership. That's Energy East Partnership, not pipeline, to be clear. And that's an example where that consensus is forming, understanding that we need to work together in order for this to happen. Much more, of course, needs to be done. Alors, il y a des exemples.
So there's some examples already of a partnership that some provinces with the corridor of the West, the West and North, and the energy from East, Energy East. But we, at the start of this process, if there's a project of pipeline that goes to Alberta, goes to north of Canada, who would do the environmental evaluation? If it's Alberta, can we trust their process of evaluation? Alberta can do the evaluation. That's the work of Alberta. But it's their responsibility. There would not be federal evaluation. Yes, of course, obviously. We must do the evaluation completely. We have a choice. We are creating the possibility of cooperation and to have an evaluation. But it's not, if I may, another example, if there's a corridor across the country, we can't have simply the evaluation at the provincial level. Better to have an evaluation at the federal level. So it's a question of cooperation. There'll be both. We have to choose. We have to choose. We do that with the cooperation. We can choose the provincial scale or the federal level. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Jillian Piper with Global News. Have you had any conversations with President Trump about inviting Prime Minister Modi to the G7?
Short answer is no.
Thank you.
Okay.
Were you aware of Gary Anandasangari's potential conflict of interest and that he would have to step back from any national security decisions related to the Camel community when you appointed him? And are you concerned about the perception around this issue of a public safety minister who can't make national security decisions on a significant area?
I'll say Minister Anandasangari has the highest standards of integrity. He's absolutely meticulous. He performed his duties as Justice Minister, amongst others, Attorney General, with a very clear focus on where there could be actual or perceived conflicts, emphasize on that. We have a rigorous vetting process, and he's taken the right decision in his judgment and in my judgment to make these arrangements. We will be well covered with respect to all public security decisions. Thank you.
Next question.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Carney. Hélène Bouzetti, des co-op de
Hélène
l'information.
Bouzetti of the Co-op of Information. 3 weeks ago, your government signed in collaboration of France and Great Britain the very muscle declaration on what's happening in Gaza and the possibility of sanctions against Israel. We've seen people being killed getting food. So I'd like to know, will there be consequences? If not, why? We follow closely the situation, the terrible situation in Gaza, and we will make decision. And when we're going to make decisions, but only with our allies. It's not the moment today.
Mais mon autre question porte sur
But my other question is on the bill, the question of your colleague. It's not very clear. In all the discussion before this project of law, there was the idea to have one evaluation, either provincial, either federal. But it's one or the other. It's not really clear. A project that would go above the frontiers, that applies to most provinces. Should the province withdraw from the process? And if a project is of national interest, we say yes. And how do we determine the how? And if the province says no, first, it's better if we have a cooperation accord with a province or a territory. That's the first point. Because it creates the possibility to have a project, one evaluation. And the federal government, we're willing to negotiate these accords with the provinces, and there's a lot of interest. If it's possible, yes, it will be the provincial evaluation. But it's not the case in all the examples that we have. The example that the territory, Northwest Territories, that I answered at the question. But we try to have an evaluation for each issue. For each issue, we must have the currency of do it. We've negotiated with British Columbia, for instance. But at the same time, what's even more important, and at the same time, we'll create with this bill, this Office of Evaluation of National Projects, that brings all the decisions at the federal levels at the same time. But the question is that, so the BAP and Quebec could say no, and you in federal, you give a project. It's not a guarantee. There's no guarantees in life. There's a guarantee of a process. There's a guarantee that the federal, we're going to do our job. But quickly. But we're not Quebec, we're not Alberta. They have their responsibility. But if I can say, we just decided, all the premiers, we just decided to work together for these projects. And they are the projects that are identified by the provinces. So there's a spirit now, a spirit of working and collaboration. But what's sure, there will be some problems with any project, one or another project. But we have many, and we can do some progress. And the federal is dedicated to work quickly to bring a project to the national level.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Kate McKenna from CBC News. This legislation essentially gives one minister quite a bit of power, including the ability to amend conditions on projects. And I'm wondering who would that minister be, and why did you decide to make this a political decision?
Well, the decision, to be clear, the decision, you've read the legislation, I can tell. So it gives the authority to the governor and council. So the minister, in consultation with the Prime Minister, to make those decisions. But those conditions are set out through a public process and a transparent process, and I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, including with Indigenous peoples. So you decide, there's a process, as you know, to decide what is a project of national interest. That's a rigorous process, publicly consulted and beyond. Then there are the conditions associated with those projects. The mechanism to formalize those conditions is made with the relevant minister, in this case, the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, for obvious reasons. aside from his roguish good looks, but for obvious reasons, because c'est impossible de traduire, c'est impossible de répéter, ça c'est clair. But for obvious reasons, because that minister, whoever occupies that post, works closely with the provinces and territories. And these conditions are developed, obviously, in collaboration with them as well. So that's the mechanism by which this happens. So it's not a that's the mechanism to formally put
All
those
right, so we're listening
into
into
place,
Mark Carney,
but
the Prime
structure
Minister,
to
taking
develop those
questions from the
conditions
media. The big story here is tabling a so-called One Canadian Economy law, where the government is trying to create one Canadian economy out of 13 provinces. You might not realize, but there's a lot of protectionism still in place between different provinces, barriers to trade. The Prime Minister saying we need to get rid of those in light of Donald Trump's trade war against Canada to make a stronger, more competitive Canadian economy. And right now, those barriers are holding Canada back. We're going to continue to follow this right here on CTV News Channel on this Friday. Stay with us.
Monday on Your Morning. This is awesome! Canadian animator and director Domi Shi on Disney's new space fanatic film, Elio. Start your morning with us Monday, only on CTV.
It's great to be helping out before my first grandkid arrives. And now that I've had some repairs of my own, I want to make sure they'll be protected. Which reminds me.
Welcome to Senior's Choice, the #1 direct choice for Canadians over 50. How can I help?
Hi, I'd like a quote for Canadian seniors life insurance, please.
If you're a Canadian resident age 50 to 80, you can choose the right amount of coverage for you and your family up to $250,000. You can choose to apply over the phone now in just a few minutes with no medicals or blood tests needed, only a few health and lifestyle questions. You're covered for the whole of your life, plus you also get a 100% advance for terminal illness. Depending on the coverage you choose, it could be as little as $17.02 a month. That's just 56 cents a day.
Well, that's cheaper than I thought. I'll do it.
He's going to be named after his grandpa.
Senior's Choice are the #1 direct choice for Canadians over 50. To get a free, no-obligation quote, call one of our trusted insurance advisors today at 1-844-859-3220 or visit seniorschoice.ca.
Do you know what Contrave is?
I do.
Oh, and you know about Contrave's program, right?
Of course I do. I know everything about Contrave.
Contrave. Yes, Contrave. Do you know what it is?
Nope.
Pay $199 or less for your bottle of Contrave tablets with the Experience Contrave program.
Ask your doctor about Contrave.
Ask your doctor about Contrave.
Contrave. Yes, Contrave.
Asbestos has been commonly known in Canada to be a dangerous product for over 40 years.
But it can take over 40 years from asbestos exposure to develop mesothelioma, a deadly cancer caused only by asbestos.
Miskin Law is fighting for Canadian workers, their spouses, children, even grandchildren who develop mesothelioma.
And we're working to ensure that Canadian asbestos victims receive maximum compensation.
Contact Miskin Law today to see if you have a case.
I love you. In a way you can't understand.
You are watching CTV News Channel. Good to have you with us. I'm Todd Vanderheyden. On this Friday, we are following this live news conference going on in Ottawa. The Prime Minister tabling a new proposed law to bring down internal trade barriers in Canada to try and diversify, make Canada more competitive, get rid of those entrenched protectionist barriers that exist between provinces. All of this, of course, coming amid Donald Trump's trade war on Canada. Let's continue to listen in as Mark Carney takes questions from reporters.
We're wondering why Mr. Modi is being invited to Canada when there is this legal process that has not cleared him and his governments of involvement in the death of a Canadian on Canadian soil.
My message is that we're a country of the rule of law. The rule of law is proceeding as it should in Canada, and I am not going to disrupt that process.
Last question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Jeremy Sharon, CTV News. You recently had a call with the Chinese Prime Minister as well. Do you trust China?
We have, this is the start of a process of recalibrating the relationship with China. It's very important that we reopen dialogue with Chinese authorities for several reasons, but I'll focus on a few. They are our second largest trading partner, the second largest trading partner for Canada. We have a number of trade disputes with China. Farmers across this country, fishers across this country are being affected by Chinese tariffs. People across this country have been affected by fentanyl and its precursors. Those are issues I raised directly, and we spoke at length about our concerns there, and have initiated processes, including ministerial level dialogue on trade and other issues. So there are important issues with China that we need to address. Alors, il y a des enjeux très importants,
issues that are very important with China, but I will concentrate first on the agriculture products and seafood, and more than that, there's some tariffs, in our opinion, that are non-justified from China on Canadian product. So those are serious problems. Secondly, we have concerns and some worries, deep worries concerning fentanyl and the exportation of fentanyl. And these are the discussions with me and the Prime Minister of China. Now there's a process we put in place, a ministerial process between Canada and China to solve the situation.
And on the bill, is the plan to try and pass this bill before the summer break, get it through the House and pass before the summer break?
Well, look, we're in a crisis. We're in an economic crisis. We sometimes, glide over that. This government doesn't. We're focused on the issues. We're still facing and intensifying unjustified tariffs from our largest trading partner. And the best way to respond to that is to respond at home, to build strength at home. We have a tremendous opportunity to build strength at home. This bill helps to unlock that. So yes, it is a top priority for this government, and we will do everything to get it passed before the summer. And Parliament needs to sit longer. It should sit longer in order to get it passed. That's what Canadians expect.